Absolutely delighted to be in this call and to present for you. So, like I said before, it's also nice to see at least one familiar face. Hopefully, I can see some others in this webinar or this Zoom as well later in the football industry. You never know in the end. So things, especially in football, go very fast regarding personnel. That was also one of the questions that you asked me. Okay, which role do you see the most chances for in the future? So I have also one sheet prepared for that. But I think in general, what I will do, I will tell something in general about SciSports. You told me before that most of them, most of you at least, know a lot of things already. So I won't go into too much depth there. And then I will tell you about three of our four components at the moment where we are doing business in as a company in especially the football industry, but we are also active on the media side and on the betting side, but that is not path that I would like to go this evening. So I will tell you more about our scouting and recruitment solution and how clubs are working like that. So I will also do a live demo as well. I like the interaction, so the more questions, the better. I will tell you something about also what we do on tracking data for performance analysis. What we now, for example, do with the Eredivisie, but also some other clubs individually. And I will tell you something about how we help agents nowadays with the career advice. I don't know if all of you have heard the story of how we helped with data with our first transfer with Memphis Depay from Man United to Olympique Lyon. That was our first example in 2018, I think. And nowadays, yeah, we have released an yeah, sorry. So we realized an automatic version of this in our career advice, which mainly is used by agents or agencies, but could also be used by clubs, especially in the selling markets like South America, for example, or yeah, even in Holland and Belgium. We are more of a selling country than a buying country. So those are the three things. And also in general, to tell you a little bit more where I think data and the football industry are heading to, more the future, and also what future roles could be created and where the needs are for clubs for people to work with data, because it's something new for some clubs at least. And the difficulties for them is, yeah, where to start, how to do it, which people I need to hire. Those are a lot of questions at clubs that they're finding a lot of difficulties to answer those in a correct way. But so those are in general are my topics to discuss. Just before I start, are there any questions so far? If it's quiet, then I will continue. Bartos, I think I can share my screen. Okay. All right. You can all see my screen. Bartos, can you not, please? Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, good afternoon again. Just in short about SciSports, the goal of the founder, where you see the quote in the bottom of Giels. Yeah, he was also a football manager geek, like most of the employees at most of the 28 employees at SciSports, but his goal was to become football manager in real life. We are living that dream still nowadays. We even have a partnership with the official game. So if you're playing football manager and you see a lot of expected goals in the game, well, we co-created them with Sports Interactive. So that was a really cool moment, especially for our founder. We're based in the Netherlands, but we also have colleagues in England, in Germany, and in Spain. And nowadays we are working with over 100 football organizations, and that differs from football clubs, agencies, consultants, media companies, federations. So we are growing, and things are going good. These are the four areas that I would like to mention today. So where you can see the scouting and recruitment, performance analysis, opponent analysis, I won't go in depth there, and the career advice. And to go to the next one, to have a little bit of an overview on how SciSports is organized at the moment. So we have a team of football managers, which I am leading as the head of, as manager football, like Bartos introduced me. We are the guys who are talking with all the clubs and agents and consultants, and hopefully to find a match that they will use SciSports. You can see also the clubs and agencies that we are working with are clubs that need to overperform. So the Liverpools and Bayerns are not in here. I don't expect them to be in here soon, but you never know. But these are all clubs. If you look like Wolfsburg, for example, or Union Berlin, or Jagiellonia in Poland, those are all clubs who need to overperform because they have smaller budgets, smaller resources, so they need to be creative. So there's a really good match with those clubs in there. Then we have a big important one, and I will come back later on in the sheet as well, or in the presentation, about the data consultants. And those are the middlemen between the clubs and the company, especially because data and science is something new, and you need to have people who can help club with challenge, who can help clubs or agency with their challenges and how data can help them. And based on the feedback and questions that we get from clubs, all that information, we share that with our scientists, and the scientists are building, based on the feedback from clubs and agencies, new functionalities, new metrics, and other features that are requested. Where we are in the scouting process, so where we are at least, and how we see the scouting process, it's all about information. So live scouting is all about information, video scouting and data scouting. Well, we are mainly, of course, in the data scouting part. So most of the time in the beginning of the process. But of course, in the end, if a live scout sees an interesting player and he wants to double check it with the data scouting again, that could also be a philosophy. What we are not saying to a club, you should do it like this or like this. We are just a really good facilitator of their process. So how do you want to align all your colleagues into work in a more efficient way and use more information to make your decision? That is where we can help with. And I think that is the most important thing for every football department, is that you gather so much information as possible in the most efficient way to make a good decision. Am I going to buy this player or am I going to sell this player? And that's the most key decision that you need to take, at least in scouting. Performance, of course, it's about should I put this player in my first 11, yes or no? Then I would like to go, this is my last sheet for now at least, before I would like to go to a live demo. It's a SciSports recruitment application. So this is my first step where I will show something in real life and how clubs are using it. Really good to know in how I will demonstrate it. There are in our eyes, four core functionalities. Maybe Ipai, you of course have seen this part of the platform already, but we are mainly talking about searching and shortlisting for players out of a pool of 180,000 players. It's an easy way to validate player tips. Well, as you all know, in football, the role of agents are very big and very influential. So a club, you can count on it, can get 20 to 50 tips per day. And if you have to check them all in a Y-Scout or in an Instat, that's very time consuming. You can hire a full-timer for only that. So that is also where we help in the efficiency, player comparisons, and also monitoring your own players. So I would like to go, if there are no further questions, then I would like to go to the platform, and please interrupt me if you have a question. So that's a good one. There he is. Okay, well, as you can see, this is the platform right now. I'm trying to get the screen a little bit. Yeah, there is. So here you see the homepage of our platform, where you can see some shortcuts to directly go to a region or to find the player or to find a player similar to, etc. Players I recently viewed, well, some quite good players on my shortlist, so who I think are interesting to follow, and they are divided in several age ranges. We right now have a special feature today with all the Euro 21 talents. So we give some tips of players who are playing on the U21s in Hungary. And some recent reports that our data consultants are sharing with me. Most of the time, the debut players, that could be an example report. If I look back at the four core functionalities and talking about, for example, validated player tip, there's a really quick and easy way to directly go to a player page. So you have the search bar over here, and this is also mainly what clubs are doing, okay? Especially in the beginning, because we notice a lot of clubs in the beginning who were very reactive. Yeah, we get a lot of tips from agents. Oh, it's really cool to help, that the platform can help me to validate those tips. But also in the end, yeah, we would like to help them as well, that they can find players on their own so that they are proactive based on their own philosophy. Well, if you click on the search bar, and I just want to point out maybe a very hot talent at the moment with Eduardo Camavinga, one of the brightest talents in France. So what do you see at the moment? I think, yeah, if you want to know more in depth about the size, scale, potential, and about the metrics behind it, I definitely want to refer you to some articles on our website. So that's quite open, where you see blog posts about this. Same with playing style and performance. But what you see over here are 5 tiles to do a deeper data analysis on a player. So what you can do is the first tile with the size, skill, and potential. Size, skill, really easy. It's the current ability of a player, and potential, how good a player can be. You can compare that directly with your own team. So let's say I'm not a sporting director of Real Madrid, but I'm Daniel Levy from Tottenham Hotspur. Then I will say, okay, how good will Camavinga will be in my current squad? Well, you can see he's a hot prospect for Tottenham Hotspur. What is the explanation? If you hover over, you see directly the explanation. Player younger than 21 with a size skill lower than a first team player, but a potential of at least a first team player. And what is a key player? If you are in the top 4 highest ranked players on size skill. If you want to go more in depth, that is also what clubs are doing. Then we click on the see details, and then you can directly compare him with the full squad, or for example, with the other defensive central midfielders and attacking midfielders. And you can also compare all the potential estimations of players.
Yes, sir, can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so because I need to understand the SciSports variable, the potential, and is it calculated based on your own algorithm that you develop, or whether you also calculate potential based on the variables like player statistics that are publicly available, so expected goals, let's say, and so on?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So maybe it's good to explain you how we calculate the size scale. The size scale, we calculate it based on match sheet data. So the position of a player, the name, age, but also there are 2 important influencers on the size scale. One is the influence on the match result of the team, so the team result, and the second one is the league resistance. So if he's playing in the Premier League, then he has a higher resistance than when you're playing in the Extraklasse, for example.
Yeah.
So those are 2 key elements on how we measure the size skill. There's no event data or tracking data included. Why? Because we wanted to compare as many players as possible in the world. So that is how the size skill is being influenced in a negative way or a positive way. So league resistance, and the contribution on the team result. Talking about potential, we also have a lot of historical players, I think 200, 300,000 players in our database. So, well, thinking about French midfielders, think about Zidane, think about Djorkaeff, think about, I don't know, maybe Patrick Vieira, Deschamps, whatever. What we do is we take players with a similar career pattern, in this case, like Camavinga, so 18 years old, playing in the Ligue 1, and how did they end up with their size skill? That's how we predict the potential. Of course, if we can predict 100% potential, then we would have asked millions, because if you can predict the exact potential, but a lot can happen. And of course, we validate this model on how good our predictions are. And 2 out of 3 predictions that we do, those players really reach their potential. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course. But in the potential, you also weighed actually the league, for example.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So basically, like player like Lewandowski would be like very undervalued at the beginning of the career because he started. Okay.
Yeah, in the beginning it is, but if more examples like Lewandowski, so they start in the Polish league, but they end up like a world-class striker like him, then that will be a change, because we directly compare, okay, an 18-year-old player playing in the Extraklasse, how did they end up with their size skill? But if 2 years later he will go to the Bundesliga, then he's being compared with a 20-year-old player playing these amount of games already in his career, and how did they end up with their size skill?
And if you, for example, plan to, let's say, take over Asian market, is it because you said you plan to do it, or maybe you will plan to do it? Because like Europe, in terms of football, for example, is very like rich in the data. Even if it's not perfect, it's rich. But for example, in Asia, and now you want to compare to the historical data, how difficult would that be to calculate, for example, potential? Because like these markets are so like, you know, like a Western frontier of the data right now.
Yeah, to be honest, no, and that's not an issue. I think Asia is not an issue at all. I think we covered the J1, J2, and J3 league, for example, and in Korea, the same. We covered China very well. Of course, there are countries like Laos and Myanmar that's maybe not covered, but I don't know if a lot of clubs are scouting in those regions. The only region where we find difficulties, but I think a lot of companies do, a lot of clubs do, is Africa. So we all depend on the data. If our data supplier has access to the data and we can get the raw data from them, and their coverage is very good, then I see no problem to do these calculations, because that is also the biggest difference what we do with other companies like Wisecout, Instead. Those are our partners. They are not our competitors, because they are the suppliers of the data, and we are trying to process the data. So we manipulate the data into insights, and that's the biggest difference. But the data coverage in Asia, for example, or in South America or North America is very good.
Sorry to interrupt. I just sorry here I'm a member and just want to ask a question about data collection. Is it very costly to collect data in an automated way during the game, or are also the data suppliers collect the data manually by tagging, for example, a successful pass and they tag it at the moment, or successful should they tag it, or they collect data in an automated way?
What they have right now, I know, but please don't pinpoint me on this one, because it's not what we do. So we do not tag or collect the data ourselves. But what I know is that a lot of people, they have the video footage, and then they have people who are tagging all the events. But of course, there are developments in the end that it's possible with, for example, full optical tracking, so that the camera itself, because the technology is becoming better and better, that the technology itself can also track all the events and all the things that happen on the pitch. But right now, most of the companies are have sort of taggers in all countries all over the world to do that in a cheap and efficient way. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
And how much the costs are? Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know. We only buy in the raw data, but I don't know what the cost price is of tagging the video footage.
Thank you.
Yeah, just also in talks in terms of the player as well, and the tip, there's also a direct link with the video. So if you click on this right now, you directly go to the video page of Instat as well. So this is also part, I need to log in, but this is also a direct link, and you go directly to the player page in Instat of Camavinga in this way. If you want to make a deeper player comparison, which is also one of the core functionalities of this platform, is that you can also directly go, okay, I want to make a deeper analysis. I want to compare him with the other two players of Spurs. So let's take Ndombele and Højbjerg. Then you directly see on the basic info that we always try to give some takeaways, so to give context to data, because we think data without context is very difficult to understand. Then you see the size skill development of all these three players. So you see that Camavinga is at the beginning of his career compared to the other two. You see some career statistics over here where you can select the seasons as well. Well, it starts with goals, assists, really basic, and you can select, or you can also compare the players on certain roles as well. So you can see that, for example, Camavinga and Ndombele are both advanced playmakers, while Højbjerg is more deep lying or an holding midfielder. So in terms of player comparison, you can also directly do a player comparison in our platform as well. Then in terms of the other tiles, where you can see the size skill development, so you can see how his development over the years are being predicted, and you can also see his historical potential. So you can see that when he was 16 and a half, that we already predicted him with a potential around 90, 95, because we see, okay, a 16-and-a-half-year-old boy making his debut in the Ligue 1, and that compared to historical players, that is a prediction for to become a really bright and potential star in the future. The playing style, which we already saw in the player comparison, where you can see over here what type of player is he. Well, he's most of the time an advanced playmaker. What is the role of it? What does an advanced playmaker do? Well, you see a description. If you hover over, if you want to know the exact criteria, you can go into the knowledge base. And this is also how clubs are doing their data analysis, and they see sometimes players with a similar playing style, and then, hey, this is also an interesting player, I want to check his profile as well. But you can also check, and this is also what clubs are doing, I want to see how his role is on multiple positions, because I'm looking for a playmaker at all midfield positions. Well, you can see that on the defensive midfielder, he behaves like a deep lying playmaker, but as a central midfielder, he plays as an advanced playmaker. So you can also define a player role on multiple positions.
There was a question from the Jose Antonio whether this is possible to include in that calculations the mental abilities, and I would add, if you're not using that or including that, whether you had idea of how to quantify that actually skill.
Yeah, no, that's a correct thing. I think he already saw some sheets from my presentation at the end, but I think this is where it will go in the future. So at the moment in our calculations right now, there are no physical data included and no mental data included. But this is what clubs in the end want. So they want to have a one-stop shop where they can find his technical data, his physical data, his mental data, his personal, his financial, his, I don't, whatever data you can find. Click on the player and you have everything. At the moment, we do not have mental data included in this, but yeah, we also see that a one-stop shop, that's what clubs want, and you have a lot of companies who are doing their bits. So I know a company like Brains First, who is doing a lot of stuff on the mental and the cognitive side. Yeah, that's a crucial part of the football game as well. But yeah, as a company, you cannot do all, but I think you need to collaborate with such companies. So that is also what we are trying to do in this industry. But good question, really. Yeah. Did I answer the question correct?
I think so. I also can add to that point that there was very interesting project by the German startup who used actually the collaborated with the Bundesliga and used IBM Watson to actually use sentiment analysis for like social media presence of the football players, and based on that develop like the mental mental profile of the player. So that is kind of the path of doing that. Yeah, but sure.
Yeah, and what is important as well is that it's not, you will not only buy a player based on his mental profile. It's always a combination of. So you combine all the information that you get to make a decision, and that's what we are trying to help the clubs with, is to also make sure that you could connect easily with their systems, or that we can connect with our API to other systems, so that you can offer the one-stop shop that clubs are willing to have. Yeah. One last part in the data analysis, that's the performance side. So what we measure over here is not, okay, he has a passing accuracy of 85%, so he's a good passer. No, we measure every action and how it contributes in scoring and preventing goals. And this is especially what clubs are doing, is combining the player roles, the size, skill, and potential with a performance of a player. So this is really an individual performance. Here you can see overall benchmarked to other players in the league. So for example, the highest central midfielder overall who played more than 450 minutes is Ouar from Lyon. But within the overall, you also have 10 action groups, so 6 offensive and 4 defensive. But if you want to have, and that is how a demo or how a conversation with a club goes, okay, dear club, what are you looking for in a midfielder? Or where do you think Camavinga is good at? Yeah, he's fantastic in his dribbling. Okay, let's check at his dribbling. There are 5 types of dribbles. Then you can see here, he has a high performance on carries, create overload, and dribble past opponent. Well, then you can see also on these graphs where you can see green is the top 33%, orange is middle 33, red is bottom 33. You can see that in the Ligue 1, he is very good in his dribbling this season. You can also compare it with previous seasons, of course. But this is how it works. Do you want to go one step deeper? Okay, his carries is very good, but why? Then you can even make one step deeper where you can see, okay, how often he makes a carry and what is the quality. So he often does it, and when he does it, the quality is high. So you can state that he's a good player who is really good in his carries. If you, for example, well, maybe there's another example. So for example, Idrissa Gueye from Paris makes a lot of carries, but his quality is average. So in this way, you can get more and more context, the deeper you do the analysis on a player, to make sure that you find the player that a manager wants or a sporting director wants. And that is what it's all about, to find players which managers, with the managers wants. Any questions on, I think we had 3 core functionalities. So how to validate the tip, player comparison, and how you can monitor your players. Those were 3 of the 4 core functionalities. If I would like to go, okay, how can you find players on your own? Then you can see right now that we have a database of 184,000 players. At the moment, filtered on potential or sorted at least. How can we find maybe a player similar to Camavinga as well? That could be a solution for Stade Rennes if they want to sell him for a lot of money. Okay, how do you find it? Well, on the left, you can see a lot of filters. So let's say I want to find a youngster as well. He needs to be a central midfielder. His main position only. He needs to be under 20 years old. I want him to have French or to play in the Ligue 1 maybe. That's even better. I want to play him in the top France, in the Ligue 1 or Ligue 2. And I want him to be good in, let's say, in the last 2 seasons, he needs to be good in dribbling because Camavinga was good in dribbling as well. Then you see within a couple of clicks, okay, find me a midfielder, central midfielder, under 20 years old in 2 leagues, who is good in dribbling in the last 2 years. And out of 184,000 players, we only have 4 players left. You do not want to cover only 2 leagues, then we have 208 players left, and then we can say, okay, but I want to have a player with an ending contract maybe, who will expire this summer. Well, then you can see other players as well popping up the list, and then you can sort this list on potential, but you can also sort it on their development in the last 6 months. So in this way, you can quickly find players who can suit your profile based on your needs. And Bartos also asked me, okay, but how are clubs using this? Well, they are saving all these kind of filters so that their philosophy is in this platform. So I can save this filter, dribbling center midfielder. I save it. And then the next day, because I also had a striker like Lukaku, that was a previous search that a club did. Okay, I load the filter and I see a player under 23, good in finishing with an ending contract higher or a height higher than 190 and a center forward similar to Lukaku. So these are the ways that clubs are using a platform like SciSports. And then you also have other functionalities like that you can create a shadow team for Cincinnati. You can put players on your shortlist as well. So it's a complete scouting platform for clubs, and it will keep developing more and more. I think Ipai will see a lot of new things that he didn't see 1 year ago. And
exactly. I was very surprised. I'm very surprised.
Very good. That's very good to hear. And if you will see this 1 year later, then it will be completely different because you want to add notes to this, labels, all just to make it better and workable for clubs to understand data and to know how to use it.
The potential and size cues, how frequently they are updated? Because I see the difference right now. So minus 0.7, for example. So this is a weekly update, monthly, or
all the numbers, all the size skills, it's updated after every game.
Okay.
Yeah, but you don't see. So let's say if he plays a good game, or the team result is very good, that okay, now it's minus 3.0 on his potential. After the next game, it's +5. That's not how fast it will go, but it is updated after every game. Yeah.
And 2 more questions from me. So when we have situations, because that's football, that not frequently, but sometimes happens. When we have a player who, the young player, for example, with a huge potential, high size skills level, and he doesn't play because of like the external issues. So for example, there is the end of the contract, he stays on the bench all the time, like for the 6 months. For example, Milik from the Napoli was sitting on the bench, but he's a perspective player, right? And how you update his skills and potential? Because basically, you know, the potential cannot change. Okay, this is the minus. Okay, so I see now. But like for me, that's a bit ambiguous because basically that's not his fault. It's like external sources that influence, but does not necessarily mean that his skills are negatively, updated.
Correct. Yeah, no, correct. But of course, we need to, and that can even be external factors like an injury. So also Milik had also a really horrible injury. Yeah. Then we have to say, or the algorithm calculates, okay, a player of his performance, he is not performing at the moment. So the algorithm calculates, then it's a drop in your size skill because you're not performing. And of course, the external factors are not explained. And that is why you would like to have as much information as possible. But we do, for example, we do not have his injury information at this point in this graph. But everyone knows, for example, with Milik, okay, he had a horrible knee injury and he had a fight with the coach, or he did not play, or he did not want to renew his contract. That's a negative influence on your size skill. But that is also very interesting as well for clubs to find players where they can say, okay, I want to find. So let's say you're Stade Rennes and you want to find players
who do not play.
Who are not playing at the moment. Then they just filter, okay, find me players who have a size scale of 100. So then you're averagely playing in the top 5 leagues, but who have a negative size skill development. So let's say -2. Then you even find players, well, these are even also players who are playing but are still dropping because the team is performing okay, but not that good compared to the predictions. So for example, Mo Salah, with Liverpool as a team underperforming a lot. That's that is a negative influence on his size skill. But in this way, you can find players who could have a negative development on their size skill. For example, Virgil van Dijk, he's not playing because he's injured. Emre Can is not performing very well at Dortmund, for example. Willian with Arsenal is not performing very well. Hoffenheim is not performing very well. So in this way, you can find players who are underperforming as a player individual because they are injured or suspended, or do not want to renew their contract, or they are playing in an underperforming team.
And is there a possibility in the algorithm to reward the players, especially in the lower divisions or clubs with the lower potential, where they play well, but the team, you just can as an individual, drag the whole team forward all the time? And is it possible to reward them just, for example, as expected value versus goals works? So basically it showcase how in reality your potential and your performance is.
But that is why, and that is also why I want to show you that is why clubs are combining the metrics. So we don't want to put everything in one metric, in one size skill or one potential, but that is why clubs are using the size skill and the performance. So the size skill is based on the team result, like we discussed, like you concluded as well. So you see that his development is -4.5. And this is the same principle in every league. So right now I show a good example, a recognizable example. But Arsenal is underperforming, amazingly underperforming. So his size skill is a negative development, but you see his individual performance is in the top 33% of the league. So in this way, clubs are able to find players who are maybe playing in an underperforming team, but individually they are performing very well. And those are the players that they want, because they do not want players who are playing in a well-performing team, but individually are performing very poor.
This is fantastic. And can I also ask a question about the market value? You calculate that, or this is from the transfer market?
At the moment, it's transfer market, but we are we are calculating our own at the moment, but we do not have that real life. This is
Because
this
I'm
is
writing the
structural.
research paper right now on the market valuation of football players, and for me that's a big ambiguous in this industry because the whole world depends on the one website, which can be biased sometimes, and that's for me very surprising. And the last question from me
Yeah, but
was
keep an eye on SciSports in the coming months on transfer values. So that's a good one.
and also the question was or is actually because at the very beginning when you told me that you can search the similar players and so on and so on, it reminds me a bit of the LinkedIn, where you can, using the premium version, you can look what people actually observing your profile. And have you ever thought about like doing this feature on your platform? It may be a bit weird or like science fiction, but when you can look as the owner of the account for the club, so the club can look how many clubs are watching your players actually, or comparing like very deeply. Was that considered?
I know where you're coming from. Clubs are asking us sometimes, okay, can you see, maybe a little bit the other way around, can you see on what players we are looking for or what players we are clicking, and can you come up with suggestions based on your algorithms? Because we're looking at this type of player, but maybe this player has the same qualities. In terms of the sort of LinkedIn principle, that's I know where it's getting, where you're getting from. I think we are going more in that direction, but you're also dealing a little bit with the privacy part, in that you also need to give, and that is 100% covered, that you would like to know, okay, all the information that a club does or all the actions that he does in our platform, those are fully confidential. So it's a gray area, but I would lie if I say that it hadn't crossed my mind yet. But also clubs need to be open for this.
Of course.
Yeah, but good question. Yeah. So on part of the recruitment application, I would like to finish this for now and continue with the presentation, if that's okay.
Just one more question. I was trying to imagine the whole process, like they tag the events in the game, they send you the data, you process the data, you visualize it here then. But it's hard to imagine that collecting and analyzing off the ball data. Okay, on the ball data is easy, like successful pass, dribbling, but how, like, could you show us an example, like off the ball analysis that player is creating an advantage for his own team off the ball, for example?
Yeah. You mean things like offensive positioning, etc.?
Yes, I saw offensive positioning actually. That's
what we have, for example, with offensive positioning. So we have all what we get in the raw data. We have all beginning points and all the end points of the events. So based on that information, we are also able to, and also with the time in between the beginning point and the end point of the event, we are able to even make some of the ball events and insights. But if you, for example, want to know, okay, he gave a pass under how much pressure, then you need tracking data. But in some of the ball events, we are able to create insights. But it's a fair comment that you are making.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
I have one more question, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just wondering, because you mentioned a lot about clubs using your services. Do you also work, or if not, do you plan to work, for example, with national teams, where scouting is also hugely important? And I can see, like, if they have a functionality where they can compare their squad to another country's squad, that would be something potentially really interesting for them.
Yeah. No, that could be possible, and we are definitely open for it. Also, to be honest, it's not a focus group because it's a really small market, and also the benefit of, for example, if we talk over here in Holland with Belgium, they are really aware of their top 20, top 25 players. But I can imagine in countries like maybe like Poland or maybe like Croatia or Russia, that it could be helpful. Absolutely. But so it is possible. Nowadays, if we work with the national team, we are more working with them on opponent analysis. But yeah, it is of course also possible in scouting players for their under 21s or their national team. It's absolutely good to a good tool to use. Also, if you have a clear idea on how you want to play as a national team. So because you can do the same principle. So if you want to have a player who is good in his dribbling on the midfield, yeah, you can do the same filters as a club than as a national team, but also as an agent or a consultant. Yeah. Yeah, good one. But if you know, Anna, if you know a national team that would like to work with SciSports, then you can always inform me about that.
That's good. Thank you.
Where was I? So just to come back on this one, and I will. One moment. No, there I was. So these are the 4 core functionalities. Just to summarize, we have access to our database of 180,000 players covered in 250 leagues worldwide. Like I mentioned, only Africa is a tough one. We do cover some leagues, but not all. Well, the searching and the shortlisting part. So find a player, yeah, like Camavinga or like Busquets, or find a player who's similar to. You can filter on a lot of things, the size, skill, potential. You can cover regions, so it's really easy to do this. What I also mentioned to Bartos is that I will share the presentation afterwards. Validating the player tips, so you directly can compare players with your current squad. You can analyze things on the size, skill, potential, on performance, on playing style, and the best way is to combine all those things. Comparing the players, yeah, with the 3 comparisons, what we did with Camavinga, Højbjerg, and Dombele, but also you can compare it on team level with shadow teams where you can benchmark yourself with the leagues. So that's also possible. And in the end, yeah, the monitoring of your players. So, okay, we would like to have a midfielder who's doing a lot of dribbles, a lot of carries or dribble past opponents. How is he doing that compared to other players on his position in his league? Yeah, and in that way, you can also discuss this with the players itself. Okay, yeah, we would like to do this more and more. Well, you have at least all the data points already. Yeah, this could be a good way to the next step. Okay, let's find some video footage to help you to become better in that. This is the part of the scouting and recruitment. Are there any additional questions on the scouting and recruitment side?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, you said your service cover data in Asia, but I think it's difficult for your service to cover, young generations, because your service depends on, data vendors. So if you have any plan or just hunch to, focus on such kind of young generations, I think players in Africa and also younger generations, like around 18 years old, I think they're a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
For clubs. So if you have any initiatives, if you have any plans, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I cannot speak about it too much in detail, but we are in talks also with clubs nearby to set up also youth leagues. Then we're talking about the under 19s, under 18s, under 17s. And in the end, what we need, if we have a match sheet and if we have a video of the game, then we are able to run our models based on that data. So the solution is easy, but where the bottleneck is that we need to have the footage of the games. And you see more and more that clubs are recording their games, but the next step is that also clubs will share it with a third party, with a company like Instead or Wisecout or Ortec or
Mhm.
whatever. So if that's available, but they could also share it with us, and we will use it with a partner, because then we are able to create the same insights that we have for senior level. So right now we are in talks with some front runners as well to see, okay, does this work in your academy? If this work in your academy, then we're going to make it national. So for example, we have a club in Holland, we take their academy, then we're showing to the other academies in Holland, hey, this is what you can do with SciSports. You can compare also the players in your academy with your first team players. Then you have youth leagues. Then you have youth leagues in, for example, Holland. Hopefully, Belgium will follow, and then it will spread, hopefully, all around the world. But that there is a market for youth players, that's very obvious, and that's also
Yeah,
a point of focus for us. But yeah, we that depends on multiple factors that we cannot influence all.
okay, I got it. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
What kind of developments do your clients ask to add, like function, like injury data and mental data, as we discussed?
No, to be honest, I think the big, in terms of metrics, what clubs request most is physical.
Physical, okay.
Can you measure speed? I think speed is the most important one in terms of metrics. In terms of functionalities in the platform, then you can think of, can I leave a note with the player? Can I leave a label with the player? Can I share, can I mention a colleague of mine to watch a player? So more in functionalities, but also things like, can I filter on a former wonderkid? So a player who had a high potential before, but now dropped a lot. The Balotelli example. So was a really bright talent, but right now. So those kind of questions are asked by clubs. But in terms of metrics, physical is the most important one, above mental.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I can imagine it. That's a point we struggled to collect when I worked at previous company.
Yeah, and that is, and you have some companies who do that, but they do it, and then you need also tracking data. So we have some ideas on how to calculate it, also based on event data, and what it's also all about, especially in scouting. I don't think that you would like to know if a player run 24 kilometers per hour or 26, but you would like to know, okay, based on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, is it 5 or is it 4 or 3 or is it 1? So a first indicator, if you're looking at a fast player or a slow player, that's the main thing that clubs want to see, because I've never heard a club who said, okay, can you please make a metric where I can filter on players who can run faster than 23 kilometers per hour. That's not the case.
I think this is because of the reason, because like when I cooperate with the clubs, the directors who actually are like below the CEO of the club, for example, they want to showcase some real good number. For example, after Champions League match, when you have 37 kilometers per hour, and that's impressive for everyone. And that's why I actually people ask for that, I think.
Yeah, but sometimes that does
practical,
yeah, and that does not tell the full story sometimes, So also distance covered. Then you see 12 kilometers in a game. Yeah, okay, but maybe also run 2 kilometers to the sideline to get a drink. I don't know.
This is the case right now when you have matches recently in Bundesliga, for example. This is controversy because you have matches that last like 110 minutes actually, because of the VR and then so on and so on. And this is so long that this is not so surprised that the distance covered it's so huge, but actually doesn't reflect the game, right?
Exactly. And that is also what we're trying to do. That's a good step to our performance analysis. So what we're trying to do here is also to gain more insights on the physical part. So, okay, distance covered or high intensity runs. Give more context to that. So in what direction? Was it in possession or out of possession? In what game phase? Was it in a transition phase, or were we attacking, or were we defending? That is also what we try to do with our performance analysis. I cannot show, I already told you, I cannot show it in depth because the data that I will show or that I can show, that's ownership of the club, so I'm not allowed to. But in this way is that you can combine event data with tracking data to create even deeper insights also on the physical part. And then in the physical part, you can compare over leagues, you can compare within roles per players in that league. And then you can create a full story on a player, but not only, it's the same with passing accuracy 80%. Yeah, what does it tell me? Maybe he played everything backwards. Same with the sprints. So you would like to give more context to data, because I think the data itself has a value of 50%, but the other value of data is how you present it. So are you able to convince the CEO, to convince the sporting director, to convince the head coach to make a good decision? And that's one of the key elements of working with data.
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
It's considering sci-fi in SciSports, my bad.
Yeah.
Do you think this brings like a major benefit on the players that are currently on the market, on teams and everything, or a major benefit to those young players who like aspire to reach bigger stages, to reach contracts with clubs and everything else?
How do you, can you repeat it one more time? What do you exactly mean with the question?
Like, I have a question regarding who do you think it would impact the most?
Yeah.
To the current players that are on the market, that it brings more benefit because they raise more awareness and they can attract major clubs to get them, or to those young players who are in academies or who aspire to be professional footballers and get to professional stages?
Yeah. And do you mean then the use of data, which will impact?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good one. I think in general, I think especially the academy, also because it's a new generation, but also if you will use data more and more in the academy, is that you can develop with the academy players, you can develop the players itself. So if you have specific criteria on what they are able to do, then you have really you have a lot of time to develop the player and to make the player better. While I think that the use of data in professional football, that's more in terms of making transfers, switching from clubs. So I think it has an influence more. It has an influence on both, but I think in terms of developing, it's more on the academy side. And in terms of making the right choice for a club or for a transfer, it's on a senior level.
Right. Thank you.
In terms of the physical and tactical analysis, yeah, what kind of stuff can you present? Or you can, like I mentioned, you can measure the team average, the role average in terms of how did they sprint, but also how did they create opportunities, what did they do with their set pieces. And you can compare all teams over the league, so you can select a couple of games and say, okay, how did this team perform against the top 3 clubs? You can benchmark, yeah, in the way that you would like it. You can see intensity overviews per match. So there are a lot of deep analysis that you can also do with our performance and based on tracking data as well. And then, of course, and this is also what we see more and more nowadays at clubs, is that clubs are defining their own philosophies. So they have a coach with a really clear philosophy. Okay, this is how I would like to play. This is what I would like to do in the offensive side on the opponent's half. This is what I would like to do in a transition phase to defense. This is what I would like to do in transition phase to attack. Yeah, and that way you can select all your markers and say, okay, this is what is important. And based on tracking data, you can measure almost everything that you would like to see. It is possible. But what the biggest challenge is right now at clubs is they sometimes do not know what questions they have. So what do you want to see? That's a really easy question for a club, for us to give to a club. Okay, what would you like to see? And then the answer of that, that's a really difficult one to make sure. Okay, I would like to see how we create chances. Okay, that's easy. But sometimes, I would like to see how we can create chances when the opponent has a corner kick. Those are all kinds of insight that we can create, but it depends on what a club wants to see and wants to define in the end. So that is how we help clubs on the performance. And in the end, if you have a clear philosophy and you can measure everything on tracking data, and you see that you are lacking on certain positions or on certain qualities, then you can use a SciSports recruitment platform to find the new player who can fit in that role or to that criteria. So that's a little bit how we see in the future also performance and recruitment coming closer together, also within a football club where a performance analyst and a recruitment analyst will work closer together. And what we are doing is always link this to video and 2D. So instead of watching a game and try to find all the moments where you created a chance, we directly have the data. Okay, this is where there was a potential opportunity in the 6-yard box. Okay, you have the moments in data, you have it in 2D, you have it in video, and you can extract that to your huddles or your video analyzer or whatever. Then I would like to go to the career advice as well.
Can I ask you before the career?
Yeah, no, of course.
Because I don't want to mess the topic afterwards. So can you tell me, so who is, based on your experience, who is like the direct user? Is it more like a sporting director? Because of course not managing director in the club. So sporting director, more like even like coach and this stuff inside the first team, more like in academy stuff, or
scouting and recruitment. Then we're talking about the recruitment analyst, chief scout, or sporting director, depends on the size of the club. If I'm talking about the performance analysis, then I'm talking about 3 areas. I think the performance analyst sometimes, but especially on the physical side, the assistant coach, but most important, the video analyst on performance analysis. Because the video analyst needs to demonstrate to the head coach the good moments, where it went wrong, where it went good, etc. So that's more on that side.
Because that leads me to my question. I was so curious just to hear that video analysis is included in that list, because you're saying that the most important problem for them is they don't know what question to ask. And that for me is very confusing, because video analysts very frequently, if not all the time, works with the first coach or like the staff of the first team.
Correct.
And the players. So what's the cause, in your opinion, of that problem that they don't know what question to ask, because they are directly connected with the staff?
Correct. But that is also where a problem can occur, is that sometimes a video analyst can show all kinds of things that the coach did not request for or is not looking for. But I'm doing it like this all my life or all the time, or the coach wants this. But it's all about, okay, you present the information, but also ask for feedback. And I think that is where things are going wrong. So asking for feedback, that's the most important thing. And I think sometimes it's just a pattern. Okay, this is the video analysis. I show some opponent chances. I show the chances that we're getting, and that's it. So asking more on what would you like to see, because coaches, they do not know what is possible with data, and video analysts, they know a lot, but they don't know everything. So it's also about asking a lot of questions, and I think that is where things are lacking.
But we can conclude that the video analysts lack more like in-depth tactical background or knowledge.
Well, I don't think that he's lacking in tactical knowledge, but more on asking the coach the questions. What would you like to see?
Okay.
And in
So
some
like
clubs
more
it's going
involvement
very
of the
good.
coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And not sharing a video report of 20 pages, but maybe 2. Because
and for that role, you can implement the data consultant. That's where their role is.
Absolutely.
So they are more tactically prepared also.
Yeah, and that they know what they can do. So that is also where our football consultants coming in. Yeah.
And what's the background of these people? So because for me it's very curious. So these like people from the industry, for example, former coaches who work for you right now, or
No.
how they people? Yeah.
What most of the people, they played football themselves on a grassroots level.
Yeah.
They have a high interest in football. They have a basic understanding in data, and they are learning about data day by day. So they are not a practical, they are not a scientific guy, but they are also not a guy who can only talk the football language. So they are the middleman.
Okay, that's cool. So, but the last question.
Well, that to be honest, and most of them also have a coaching course. So UEFA C, UEFA B. That's a prey, but it's not requested.
And also, you mentioned that there is the ability to connect with the API, and also connect with your data set, your Python or our Studio notebook.
Yeah.
How frequent is that? Because for me, like possibility is great, but how actually that is used by clubs? Is it frequent?
Yeah, quite frequent. And what clubs are doing is sometimes they only work with the API, sometimes they only work with the platform. But what we see more and more is that a part of the club is using the API and a part of the club is using the platform, because you have different profiles within a club. So some people, who is quite digital and knows how to work with a computer, he doesn't have a clue about an API, but he understands the platform because that's easy to use. So it's a mix nowadays.
So the clubs often lack more like a technical guy. I think they undervalue still the necessity for the technical guy who will accelerate the process between okay.
Yeah, but what I think as well is the technical guy. You see them more and more with the clubs, but where you see that there's a gap between the technical guy and the decision makers, because the technical guy is really technical, and like I mentioned before, it's also about presenting the data in the right way. And if he is talking in a very complicated language, then they do not understand each other.
So the perfect guy will be someone like a product manager with the normal technical skills with the sports background.
With the football understanding, yeah, correct.
Okay.
The lights are getting very dark over here. I'm going to put some lights on. One moment. Yeah. You can still hear me? One moment. Am I still here?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I cannot hear you anymore, but is it okay?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Then I would like to show the last thing of the career advice. So what do we do over here on the career advice is we try to help agents, but also clubs, to find players with the perfect match. So based on the player profile, can we find a match in with a new club based on their data profile? If I would like to demonstrate that to you in real life. So what you see over here, these are some of my reports, but then we go to the transfer advice. Well, maybe we can take the same player that we did already today. We fill in Camavinga. Let's say I'm the agent of Camavinga. I think we need to sell him for, let's say 50 million. Then I can select the advice mode on balanced playing time or ambitious. Or let's take it for balanced. I can create an advice for my player. And like I mentioned before, you can do this as a club, but also as an agent, and directly based on certain potential development, playing time, playing style, formation, club status, and transfer likeliness. It creates a club fit on what could be the best next step for, in this case, Eduardo Camavinga. And then you can select the club and you can create a report and you can directly send that to your technical director to say, okay, this is the reason why you should buy Camavinga. So this is also something that we can do for agents, and you can customize it in the way you want. So if I go back again to the create report part, so I want to create a club report, and I say Camavinga, and I want to compare him with, well, in this case, two loan players, but I can also select other players. So I can say Smith Rowe, and then I can create a report, a comparison report of this player. So we can also help agents with helping their players for their next moves as well. And you can, yeah, create this in a way that that you would like.
So you can buy actually the access to your platform as an individual agent.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. Well, like I mentioned a couple of times, the expected trends by SciSports, I think, and I won't discuss them all 6, but what I think is that the use of data will become more and more common in football. And then I'm not only talking about the data that we are providing, but also mental data, physical data, everything. But most important thing is that we create a one-stop shop together, and that companies will collaborate with each other so that clubs have all the information available to make their decisions. And I think what is a very important one is that you see more and more techies in clubs, and the challenge will be to create a way where the talks of the techies will be understood by the football people. So the football language should be universal also for tech people. So that's an important one. And if I'm looking at, yeah, parts of the ecosystem, I think in the end, maybe our platform will always be there. But more and more clubs are going to work with APIs because they want to connect some information from Instead, some information from 21st Club, some information from SciSports, some information from StatsBomb. Yeah, in their own information, because clubs think, okay, this is interesting there, this is interesting there. Yeah, and they want to have everything together. So that is also a development that we are seeing, and we need to be prepared to be part of this ecosystem. So that's what we are doing, and that's why we are partnering with a lot of club companies as well, to make sure that we are building these connections with each other. And in terms of, yeah, where I think that guys or girls like you can work in the sports industry, looking from my perspective and looking at what we have at SciSports, so the football manager, the data consultants, and the data scientists, I think that there is a big need for data consultants. So to transform all the data, all the information that is available within a club, to transform that in one environment, one place where decision makers, the important stakeholders, yeah, can base their decisions on. And that's the most important thing. People who understand data and who can present it. And that's in my opinion, the most important role in the football industry. So that was a part of my presentation. I hope it was interesting for you. I hope it was interactive for you, and it was worthwhile to listen to. So yeah, I'm really open for more questions, of course, but or feedback. Always good.
One question. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think you talked about it, but just I wanted to confirm, like you said now, the most demanded position is data consultants. As I understood, it's like more in an enterprise, it would be like data analysts who process the data and create insightful graphs from out of the data. And you said having a license is not needed, but it's a plus from UEFA license. But it's difficult to get UEFA license. So would you suggest any other certification or like we can do online that will help us our football knowledge, apart from being a supporter or
Yeah.
follower, let's say?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's always good to join webinars, to look for certain courses. So we will also start hopefully with one soon. You also have certain football courses, scouting courses as well, but also performance analyst courses all around the world. So where you can get certificates. So if you're not able to get a coaching license, and it's also not that as a data analyst, you need to be on the chair of the coach, but you need to understand what the coach is dealing with. So he needs to make decision on players. So that is why you need to understand each other. And what the most heard comments and concerns are, yeah, but you have never played football before. You have never been a coach before. How do you know that? And that is something that you need to prevent from happening. So to make sure, okay, you gain some knowledge, maybe also a short internship with a coach or with a club that could help. So just to make sure that you do not create a gap between the smart data people and the smart football people. You need to be the gap in between. And there are a lot of people without coaching licenses who are very successful in this role.
Yeah. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.
You mentioned the clubs that are actually participating or using your platform, and what's the alternative for other clubs? For example, bigger clubs who don't use the platform. So what's the alternative for them? They're using the own internal software, be exactly for them, or how they what's the alternative for them?
Yeah, that could be. So if you look at other solutions, is a club can work in some kind of Excel sheets, and they work with some raw data from Wisecout or Instat, where they make some own models. In my opinion, the dangerous thing about that is if you have one scientist in your club and he is leaving because Real Madrid is calling him, hey, do you want to work for my club? And he's leaving. Okay, who else is going to take over that part? So that is a solution. The other solution could be that a club doesn't work with data. So they only check all their tips in Wisecout instead, and then they check live. A lot of clubs are doing that. And also, if you are successful, then that's good. And of course, there are also other platforms where you can find data as well. So some clubs are even using Football Manager to find players. So there are multiple ways to do it. And for us, for SciSports, we will never work with all the clubs in the world, and we don't want to, I think. But for us, it's important to find the right match between club and company.
And what's the biggest obstacle when you approach? Because you are the manager, right?
Yeah.
On this more like a business event side and approaching the club. So what's the biggest obstacle in terms of convincing the clubs to use the platform? Whether it's like the knowledge, pure knowledge that they can gain from that, information gain, or pricing, or what can it be that?
I think pricing and knowledge, that's not the biggest obstacle. I think the biggest obstacle is for them to show them how it can be useful in their current process. Because let's say if a club is not working with data, then something is coming in their club where they do not have any experience with. So to make sure and to convince them on, okay, we are going to help you with integrating this in your process. That's the biggest challenge, because you need to influence their thoughts and their habits, and their habits and thoughts are stuck maybe for 10 to 15 years because there was no other solution. So that is the most difficult part, to convince them in a sort of new way of working.
But because for me that's fascinating also, because the data in sport is so popular for years right now. Everybody's talking about that, and now you think this very interesting fact. So is it a very big proportion of clubs who are not using, I would say, data architecture for sports,
Yep.
or this is like smaller and like outliers?
No, I think there are definitely some regions where data is not being used, and there's also a difference in data, you know. So you have, if you look at Transfermarkt, then you can find data. You can see how many games a player played. You can see his transfer value. You can see an amount of goals. And some clubs are saying, yeah, we are working with data, but then they are only working with Transfermarkt data. Yeah, so there's a difference, you know. Also in so that's a difference in level. And also you can say some clubs have certain suppliers. How are we going to, let's say if you work already with StatsBomb or you work already with 21st Club, okay, I'm interested in SciSports because they can bring something else to me as well. How are we going to combine both data sources into one without logging in 8 or 9 different platforms? So yeah, it's absolutely about the process. And yeah, to be honest, there are some front runners in data, and the top clubs like City, Leipzig, Liverpool, they have their own SciSports in the building. They have maybe 6 or 7 scientists on board. They are really mature and advanced, but a lot of clubs, they are in the beginning, and that's also okay. I think in 5 to 10 years the world is completely different.
And can I ask about the balance of power actually in terms of advancement in technology in sports? So what's the proportion of like clubs in like the more Western developed Europe, let's say Spanish League, England League, Premier League, right? To like the Eastern Europe, for example, you mentioned Poland. Are the Eastern Europe catching up, or Central Eastern Europe or other continents catching up, or
Yeah.
or like the proportion is still very big that to the favor of Western developed countries?
I think Western Europe, I think Eastern Europe is 3 years behind Western Europe. And I think South America is almost 4 to 5 years behind.
Okay.
My feeling, but it's all about the people who are working there. Like I mentioned before, we have the Polish club Jagiellonia, and they have some forward-thinking people on board. And it's also really easy to make steps, because if you do not have anything at the moment, and you're going to start with working with a platform like ours, then working from nothing to working with SciSports, it's a huge change. And hopefully, if it's successful, then they only want to have more insights and they want to work more efficient. So the fact that there is a gap in working with data, I think it can be easily be covered to 1 year or a half year behind the Western European leagues. Because in the end, it's not about who builds the coolest spider webs or graphics or whatever. It's just, okay, with all the information there is available, how can I make the best decision? And that is something that Victor Orta also told me. He said, okay, I receive a lot of information from many different platforms, also yours, but I combine everything in the end to make a decision on a player. And if so, it's about combining the information. But if you have all this information, still people are taking different decisions, because if you and I are looking at a game of Legia Warsaw against Lech Poznan, then I see interesting players, but you as well. And I'm 100% sure that those are not the same players, because we have different philosophies. We work at a different club, for example. So that's the dynamic thing of the industry. But the fact as well that clubs in general are quite conservative in changing their philosophy and changing their working methods.
Okay, so two more questions from me at the end. So you mentioned, for example, City, Liverpool as the most advanced actually. From the lesser known countries but clubs, I would say, who basically use, for example, your platform, who is like the most which is the club that is most progressive, data driven? That's something that maybe we don't expect, but that club is really, really worth mentioning.
Outside of Western Europe, you mean?
It can be in Western Europe, of course.
Okay. What I think, where I'm really interested in this club, but we are not working with them, to be honest, is Barnsley.
Oh, okay, yeah, because they have the strong statistical background, I would say.
Yeah. So that is also some club that I would like to talk with. I haven't spoke with them before, and also in terms of data as well. And also a really good club with a good philosophy is Norwich City.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a club that I prefer a lot.
And the second practical, okay.
Yeah, no, go on.
Yeah, the second practical question was, if you are a data consultant, you become data consultant, you are your job is targeted at actually the country you specialize for or you come from, you know them, you have the knowledge for. So for example, I'm from Poland, so I would be direct to the Polish league.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's I should start at least there. But what is also so, for example, if you are from China and you know a lot of clubs in China, of course, then it's good to help Chinese clubs. But in general, of course, clubs also want a sort of exclusivity. So let's say if you have a good relationship with one Chinese club, maybe it's better than to work with another club in the United States and with one club in Poland. So there's no conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jesper, I had a question.
Yeah.
So you were talking before about data consultants, right? And I'm guessing for that you need first some data analysis skills, right? But also the football knowledge.
Yeah.
And in there, or sports knowledge, depends on what you're looking at. And in that sense, do you think it's better to get a certification, something that it's related to sports data science or sports data analysis? Or is it better, as you said before, to actually focus on scouting certifications? So which one would provide a better advantage in that sense, assuming you have the data background?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I do not have a data science background, but I see with my profile, with my own profile, and I'm also not a data consultant, but I speak quite easily with sporting directors as well, because I have a sort of scouting background right now with SciSports, and also what I did with the club before, and also I have my courses, so I can sort of imagine how a sporting director is acting and what kind of factors he needs to deal with. While if you are really then you are more a generalist. But if you are focusing really on data science, then you are a specialist in your job. So that also depends on what the club is looking for, and also that depends on your own needs and future dreams, of course. So if you want to be more generalist and leading a football department, then I would advise more, okay, to do a little bit of both. So a little bit of scouting, a little bit of performance analysis, a little bit of, so that you understand the basics. So if a scientist is talking to you and he's talking about Python, that you don't think it's a snake, but it's you know, it's back-end work or whatever, that you know it's IT. But if you want to be one of the best data scientists and a valuable addition within a club, yeah, then I should focus more on that part. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was perfect, Jesper. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I see there are 6 left, so I 7.
Okay, so I think that's all. Thank you very much for today. For me, the presentation was really good. Like, I'm really glad that you provided the demo, of course, because that's not available for everyone. And I hope that will be valuable information for everyone. So thank you very much. Good luck in the future. I hope your company is actually named the next unicorn in the sports industry. So I hope you achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much all for listening and for the questions. And some of you I will speak soon, and I hope that some others I will speak as well.